Welcome to the All Things Safety podcast. I am your host, Benita Mehta, and today we're doing another editor's talk. I'm here with editor-at-large Dave Johnson, and today we're going to discuss a lot of current events, a lot of things happening in Washington right now. Dave, do you want to get started?
Yeah, actually, the most recent thing, safety and health related that happened in Washington was just last night, Monday night. It was announced that the Secretary of Labor, Lori Chavez DeMermer, has resigned. And it really comes as no surprise. We've written about this, and there's at least one story on the ISHN website. Going back maybe a couple of months when this first became news that the Department of Labor, their Inspector General's office, was investigating claims that the secretary had committed travel fraud, and there were also allegations of professional misconduct in the front office with her aides. This has been going on since January. So the resignation last night, really not a surprise. Got to say that the secretary, of course, denies any any wrongdoing, and really blamed the media for this story. And right after the podcast today, I'll be writing up a news story, posting it. You'll post it on ISHN today with more details about this resignation, but just happened last night. The two stories I was going to talk about, Benita, had to do with fiscal year 2027, although that seems a little bit off in the future. Last week, the Trump administration proposed its budget for the next fiscal year, and really kind of a story of deja vu all over again in terms of the budget proposals for OSHA and NIOSH. Uh, Deep budget cuts proposed for both agencies. I'll just quickly run past a couple of highlights, or maybe they're lowlights, in terms of the OSHA proposed budget. OSHA, for instance, start with OSHA's enforcement proposed to be cut by almost 14%. Fewer inspections are proposed, a decrease of more than a quarter, 27% from fiscal year 2025, and down more than a third from fiscal year 2024. So fewer inspections are on the docket, on the horizon. And it should be noted that OSHA's enforcement staff is at the lowest level in the agency's 55-year history. Standards is also taking a hit. It's proposed that standards, the budget will be slashed by 15%. And again, it's worth noting when it comes to staffing in the standards office, the proposal would call for 44 staffers in standard setting. That is down by more than half from the 96, almost 100 staffers that was in the standard setting office back in 2012. So both enforcement and standard setting, again, are proposed to take deep cuts in this second year of the Trump administration proposing OSHA's budget. Not really surprising that enforcement and standard setting take a hit in a Republican administration. That's kind of typical in a deregulatory minded administration, which most Republican White Houses are. By the same token, the one increase is in compliance assistance. That's proposed to go up by 14%. And again, that's kind of typical to have a more friendly OSHA putting its hand out, trying to help employers rather than penalize them. Again, kind of a typical mode of operation for Republicans. So overall, OSHA's budget is proposed to go down by about 8%. And it's important, this is important to note, Benita, that last year, Similar situation, deep cuts were proposed across most of OSHA's activity, but the Senate stepped in and kind of acted as a brake, restored OSHA's funding to the same level, almost the same level that it was at the prior year. And the bottom line was OSHA only received a zero point 0.5, half a percentage point reduction in the budget. And I think that pattern will be replayed this year. The wild card being that this year we have in November, of course, the midterm elections, and the prognosticators um, think that there's a very good chance that the Democrats are going to regain control of the House. Slight chance of regaining control of the Senate, but pretty good chance that Democrats will be the majority in the House. If that happens, when OSHA's budget reaches the House of Representatives this time, you'll see OSHA's budget proposals go up quite a bit, with Democrats uh, definitely having a different mind when it comes to OSHA activities. But overall, I think probably we're looking at a similar situation at the end of the day, where OSHA's budget for fiscal 27 is going to be probably level with the funds that it's been working with this year. Now, the second Washington story has to do with NIOSH. And again, a similar situation. Once again, the administration is proposing really deep, drastic budget cuts to NIOSH, cutting NIOSH's budget by about three quarters, about 75%. And as you'll recall, last year, um, Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency proposed to pretty much wipe out NIOSH. I think with budget cuts up to 90%. There was a massive lobbying effort by the Friends of NIOSH, professional societies, American Society of Safety Engineers, the Industrial Hygiene Association, National Safety Council, labor unions, went up to Capitol Hill, also worked through the courts, and eventually turned around what was going to be really the virtual elimination of NIOSH, and restored NIOSH's funding and its staff cuts, and brought the agency back to where it was the year before. Now that battle is going to be fought all over again. Here's just a couple of lowlights from the proposal for fiscal year 2027. One of the most important NIOSH functions, the National Occupational Research Agenda. This is where NIOSH does its most important research. The budget would be zeroed out with zero funding for fiscal 27. Another very important NIOSH function, the Education and Research Centers, which does some of the most really important occupational safety and health training in the country, and research, and these ERCs they're called, usually housed within universities across the country. Again, they've been really the mainstay of NIOSH's training efforts ever since, for NIOSH's entire existence. Well, those education and resource centers would get no funding in fiscal 27. They would disappear. Another category called Other Occupational Safety and Health Research. Again, NIOSH is primarily a research agency. Other research, again, would be cut by 100% with no funding in 27. One more important activity that NIOSH does worth noting is its Personal Protective Technology Office. This is where NIOSH does the very important work of approving respirators. That work is proposed to be cut by about a third, about 30% in 2027, and would definitely slow down and delay quite a bit NIOSH's ability to approve new respirators and get new respirators out on the market. Um, so again, NIOSH's overall budget, if the administration had its way, would be cut by 75%. But again, this is just the first shot fired in a battle that we saw last year. And again, there's going to be, I think, a huge lobbying campaign mounted by the professional associations, by the unions, by the different friends of NIOSH. And if I had to predict, I would think the outcome is going to be the same, although it looks dark right now. With all the lobbying that was done last year, Congress has a much better understanding of what this little agency does and the value that it provides through its research and training and respiratory certification. So now that Congress is aware of NIOSH and aware of NIOSH's value, I think the lobbying effort will probably again succeed, and NIOSH will probably end up operating with the same level of funding, not an increase, but the same level of funding as last year. So there are three stories out of Washington. Um, we're talking about politics in this podcast, at least coming from me. So you have a little bit different of a story to talk about, Benita. What would interesting story with technology again, technology and ergonomics. Talk about what you delved into.
Yeah, so kind of the opposite end, not so much breaking news and political issues, but technology is always something that we cover, and this kind of struck my interest. There there are all these motion capture tools that have become sort of highlighted in the past year or two. And this one specifically relates to ergonomics, which I found interesting because we cover that as well. And I know we've covered in the past, we've had a few articles about musculoskeletal disorders,
No,
MSDs,
sure.
which, are a big source of injuries and workplace, uh, workers having to take time off to focus on these types of injuries. And these are repetitive motion injuries that are often found in places like warehouses, manufacturing facilities, things like that. So I interviewed a certified professional ergonomist
Mhm.
at a health company, and she's an expert in motion capture technology. And so she
Benita,
spoke
if
to
I can
me.
stop you just a
Yeah,
minute, what's motion capture technology for a Luddite like me that
yeah,
is not
sure.
up on technology? Describe motion capture technology.
Yeah, so basically what it does is it uses AI. It can, but it cannot. There are uses without AI, but for this purpose, we're talking about AI uses. Um, and basically what it does is it identifies movement patterns and high risk body mechanics, which is basically repetitive motion, things that workers are doing that could potentially cause injuries. And so it is in layman's terms, it's almost like a video camera.
I was going to say it comes from a
Yeah,
camera, right? Okay.
yes. So these would be either in the facility, sort of like sort of a camera high up in the ceiling,
Right.
or it might even be a body camera in the equipment that
Oh,
someone is wearing. So some of these could be worn in maybe it could also be worn on their helmets or their if they're wearing those. I think it
right.
depends on the facility. So it depends on the PPE. But for this specific use case, it is going to be video cameras mostly.
Okay.
But they partner with AI.
Hmm.
So basically the data is being analyzed by AI. And then
Right.
AI is going to sort of look into it and see, hey, this motion these workers are doing, this could lead to a knee strain injury or a back injury or a elbow injury or that kind of thing.
This
And
is based
so,
on information that AI has collected.
yes.
Okay.
Yep. So while looking at what the workers are doing, then AI analyzes this data, and then a specialist, a human would look
Okay.
at it and then receive those, that analysis, and then they would then look into it and say, okay, well, AI has pointed out these specific things that workers are doing. How can we change how we operate or change what we do in this facility or these motions these workers are doing to fix this before these injuries occur?
Yeah,
So that's kind of what it's doing. So it's used more as a tool. It's not going to specifically say, these are the fixes you need. This is what we
right.
need to do. They're not going to fix it for you. So a specialist still needs to go in and do those fixes.
Yeah, I was going to
Um,
say, does this I wouldn't say eliminate the job of an ergonomist, but it changes the job of an ergonomist, I guess, eh? How would
yeah,
you
yeah,
describe how it
definitely.
changes their work?
So basically, what Christiane Egbert is the ergonomist that I talked to, and she said that she likes to think of it as evolving. So she
Right.
tends to think that, it's a shift in how they operate. So they are spending less time specifically, looking or counting the data, taking the numbers, kind of looking at the workers. They're spending less time doing that, and they're spending more time solving these problems and looking into the solutions. Whereas before, she'd be spending a lot more time collecting the data
Mhm.
and then analyzing it to see how often this is happening, how many times they're doing these tasks, whereas AI can do that for her.
Mhm.
So now what she's doing is she's going to, look at what AI tells her is a problem area and
Right.
then go in and address those problem areas with the company she's working with or with the workers.
With the workers, yeah.
So it's a time savings. And
Okay.
so she doesn't look at it as a replacement.
Hmm.
It's more of a time saving so she can do other things.
Okay.
And so I think thinking of AI as a tool, even not in this specific case, but in general, I think looking at AI as a tool versus an employee or a
Yeah. Right.
worker, I
Yeah.
think is the better way to look at things.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people are concerned about AI tools even taking over jobs. And I mean,
Yeah.
it is happening. It's definitely happening. But I think the key issue is you can't trust AI for everything.
No.
I mean, she basically said that too, and she's an expert in this type of technology. And she said that she's going to be still looking at AI
Mhm.
or looking at the data herself.
Right.
Um, she's still interpreting the data. She's
Yeah.
not letting AI tell her this
Yeah.
is exactly what's wrong. She's still going to decide what's wrong herself. So I think that's the difference is that you're using AI as a tool and you're using it to sort of collect all this data. Because I mean, she's not going to be there herself watching the workers during their 8, 10 hour shifts, however long their shifts are. She's
Yeah.
not going to be watching them and then replaying that video herself.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very time consuming. So I think in this case specifically, I think it's a great tool for sort of taking all that data and then having it all be laid out for an ergonomist to see versus having to look through it yourself. So
Just calling up something here. Uh, it's interesting to me, Benita, that for all the articles that we've written, all the talk at conferences about AI over the last probably going back 5 years since it really started to um, and become widely talked about. It seems like in safety and health, from the research, from some of the surveys I've seen, most companies and most professionals are still um, kind of like in the education and exploration stage, I guess I would say, with maybe testing some tools, running pilots, but not many workplaces at this point for safety and health applications have really invested heavily, say, in AI. How does that compare to what this work with ergonomics and this particular tool? Do you have any sense of how widely this is being used at this point?
yeah, so I don't think this is being used very widely yet. I think
Hmm.
that it is being used by certain facilities and certain companies, but I think there's a lot of hesitation there still.
Hmm.
And I know that's what we talked about a little bit too when I spoke to Christiane. Um, and I think that a lot of it is due to education. I think that people need to be familiar with these tools and
Yeah,
understand how they're being used. And I think it is kind of, that big brother mentality too with some of this stuff, especially motion capture, I think,
yeah,
because you're being recorded.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's kind of scary too for a lot of people.
yeah,
So I think that is where education comes in. That's where people like Christiane come in to maybe talk about what this is actually doing and how it's going to reduce injuries and, kind of look at the negatives and the positives and see, they're always gonna be negatives, I
yeah,
think is the key thing. And there are always gonna be people who just really don't want that, you know, that recording or that
yeah.
big brother-esque sort of, you know, just hovering over you, you know?
There's definitely privacy issues there.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
It
Yes.
strikes me, Benita, that when it comes to AI in occupational safety and health, there's three groups of people that need to be educated. First, the professionals themselves, as you say, need to just learn about AI generally, and then specific applications, the many applications, the applications that just keep growing every year for safety and health specifically. Um, that's an education effort that professionals need to undertake. Then I think it's important that workers understand how AI can be used for safety and health. And like you just said, try to overcome in some cases, their fear of Big Brother and their fear of how are you going to use this information? Can this information can this video or whatever, if I'm wearing a wearable sensor, and it's collecting maybe health information from me, my blood pressure, my heart rate, or whatever. How's this going to be used? So I think workers need to be educated. And then the third group seems to me to be senior leadership who holds the purse strings and needs to be convinced that investing in artificial intelligence for safety and health makes sense and has value. And as you know, safety and health has always kind of been a tricky sell to upper management because it's a cost center, really. It's not a profit center. So you have to make the business case of how safety and health investments can pay off. I think the same thing applies with artificial intelligence. Safety pros are going to have to be educated themselves enough to make the business case to management that artificial intelligence is not going to replace human safety and health professionals, but here's how it can add value and reduce injuries and incidents and cost. It's interesting. It's interesting to see where we're at now and compare it to where we were 2 years ago. And it makes you wonder, wow, where are we going to be 2 or 3 years from now with AI and safety and health?
Right. And I think the other thing too that people are concerned about is they don't want to be left behind.
Yeah.
So if you don't adapt and you don't learn about this stuff, everything related to AI, what's
FOMO.
going to happen?
Yeah.
It's kind of, well, if you embrace AI, is it going to replace your job? But if I
Yeah.
don't embrace AI, is it just going to leave me behind?
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I don't know if there's a great answer to that question, but it's just
Yeah.
something to think about.
Well, you do a great job with the technology newsletter that you put out. And I would just encourage listeners and visitors to the website to subscribe to your newsletter because you're talking about AI in a number of articles, it seems like, and every tech newsletter that you put out.
Yeah, so that newsletter, it comes out once a month, and it's usually the third Wednesday of the month, and so
Okay.
it's all technology focused. It's all a lot of AI lately, obviously,
Yeah.
but technology in general. So yeah, please subscribe, and you will learn all the latest technology articles that we are working on. One other thing I wanted to mention is that my whole conversation with Christiane, which is very interesting, will be published as a separate podcast in addition to the article that's already on the website. So I encourage everyone to listen to it. It's a very interesting conversation. Christiane is a fantastic expert in the field, and she knows her stuff. So
Yeah, and I would just encourage listeners to check out all of the ISHN podcasts because Benita, you have done a number of podcasts with AI as the focus, talking to experts in artificial intelligence about all different angles of how AI can be applied to safety and health. A number of podcasts are already up and running on that.
yeah,
So check it out, folks.
yeah. Thanks, Dave. It's a great
Okay.
conversation. A lot of news coming out of Washington, and then some great AI discussion.
Yeah, yeah. Pretty broad one this time around, Benita, going from technology to good old politics,
Yeah,
old school
yeah.
politics, new school technology. So, yeah, good talking to you.
Thanks, Dave.